Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated, as well as the host for the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. You can find me on IG when you go to @HondoSR. You can find me when you go to X @Hondo Carpenter. And this guy right here joins us each and every week. We've been doing this for many, many, many years every week. One of my best friends on the planet, a true brother. I love him dearly. The great Matt Halatic from the spun.com. Now, I want to say this. If you are not a person who reads the Spun, it should be in your favorites. Every morning when I get up, as soon as I finish my devotions, I get right on and do my job. And the first thing I look at is the Spun. So, Matt, great to have you. I got the hiccups this morning. Great to have you with us. Let's talk draft. Let's start. We're going to get a lot into the Raiders. But I want to start because in my heart, I'm from the state of Michigan. I'm a Michiganer, or it should be called a Michiganian. But I could not believe the things I'm hearing, and the love for the city of Detroit was amazing. Would you discuss it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the cooler things that the NFL's done in recent years is given different cities a chance to host the draft. And we've seen every city that's been given that opportunity has stepped up big time. We've seen, Nashville, Philly, Arlington, Cleveland, Kansas City, all of them have been great. But Detroit, I believe, set attendance records. I mean, that crowd was jumping from Thursday night on. They were ready to go. Um, I thought it was awesome. I've been to Detroit a couple of times. It's a city that I think kind of gets a bad rap, and a lot of people kind of go with stereotypes about it, or a little unknown about what it's really like. And I think that you got a good chance to see the city of Detroit, the Lions fan base, NFL fans in general really stepped up big time for that draft. I thought it was awesome.
I had a bunch of Raider fans because they know I'm from Michigan ask me, is it safe? I'm like, of course, I love Detroit. I've been all over the city of Detroit, have never once ever felt threatened. But have you ever been to 8 Mile? Lots of times. Um, and asked me where to eat. And I got to tell you, so I'm hearing from Raider fan, it's freezing. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. And I'm talking to my friends and family who were there, and they're like, "Oh, it's great. I'm not even wearing a jacket."
Yeah, it's different. I
Total
mean,
mix. Good.
if you're not used to any cold, it always makes me laugh. You see people come up from Florida to the New Jersey, New York area, and it's 55 degrees, and they're all bundled up, and we're walking around in maybe a hoodie or something like that, or you go out to the Midwest and you're not used to that, and you think it's freezing, and Midwesterners are just like, "Ah, this is another day." So that is true.
What did you think of the Raiders being able to get Bowers? I mean, one of the few can't miss prospects. Uh, Unbelievable. Nobody thought he would be there at 13. It was stunning. I'd love your opinion.
No, I mean, I never even thought of him as under consideration for the Raiders just because I never thought he'd get to 13.
Mhm.
The guy that we had pegged and a lot of other people had pegged Talise Fuaga was there. But I think when you get a chance to get a player of Brock Bowers' caliber who can create mismatches, who can, you could use in two tight end sets with Michael Mayer, you could split him out. Um, he could be a major, major weapon in the passing game from day one. I think it was just too good to pass up if you're Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. I loved it. I think that when you look at the Raiders receiving core, they're set. Their top three receivers are set, but beyond that, they have openings at wide receiver. They have Michael Mayer, yes, at tight end, but now you have Brock Bowers who you can do so many things with. So I thought it was
You
it
got
was a good pick.
Harrison Bryant, you got Cole Fotheringham, and they
Yeah.
signed Gallup, the wide receiver.
Yes, that's true. Michael Gallup, I thought that was a worthy gamble post draft. If he has anything left to get back to what he was a few years ago before the ACL, then that's obviously you could do a lot worse than him as your third or fourth receiver.
That's your fourth. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Absolutely amazing. I thought the Raiders top to bottom. I want to get into something that I talked about recently, and I would love to hear your opinion. And it's about draft grades. Now, I told Raider fans, I don't care about my opinion on draft grades. I don't care about other media's opinion. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to say who because I'm not trying to call anybody out, but I saw a national media guy who, by the way, I do like. I think he's a very good guy who was grading another team, not the Raiders, but another team. And he goes, I don't like this pick. They needed X position, and this guy was on the board. And I laughed because that guy is a great player, but he doesn't fit the scheme of the team. And so, yes, I like to use the long snapper as an example so nobody knows what I'm talking about. Or else people will say, you should have got this tackle. Okay, well, but that tackle's a zone tackle, and the team doesn't run a zone offense. I mean, it's like I need a transmission for my truck, but I'm going to go get a Yugo transmission. It doesn't matter. They may be transmissions, they don't work. That's why I don't disrespect. People are allowed to give their opinion, but I could care less. I don't care what I think. So the way I grade is I go to, and you and I have been friends a long time. You know, I know a lot of people, and I go to other executives and other coaches, and I say, what do you think about these picks the Raiders made? And they'll tell me. Okay, like I had a coach tell me, we really like Delmar Glaze. We thought he had an amazing Senior Bowl. We thought he was outstanding at the Senior Bowl. He doesn't fit our scheme, but he was so teachable at the Senior Bowl that we felt like we could, if we got him late enough, we could coach him into our scheme. Okay. But he's perfect for the Raiders. To me, those grades are what matters. Agree or disagree?
I would agree. I think another thing that you see as with fans, hey,
Say hi to Uncle Matt. Say hi.
big
Tell him
big
say hi.
Dex, what's up, bud? How are you? He he's
Sorry, he
up bright
doesn't
and
feel
early this
great.
morning.
So he doesn't feel
Oh, I'm
great.
sorry.
So Daddy's holding him.
Um, so I think getting back to what you said, one of the things that you notice too, and you get into it, and I know as a fan as well, you know what your team needs position wise, or you feel like you know what your team needs. But a couple of things that you may not, we're not privy to, fans aren't privy to, and even writers aren't always totally privy to how organizations rate the players they already have. They might feel differently about the development of a player that they already have on the roster. So you're looking at it saying, "Oh man, they need a safety, or they need a offensive guard, or whatever." And they may feel they have somebody already in the building that can fill that role. So something that they may pass on the perceived need pick for something else. So I think that's one of the reasons why draft grades can be kind of tricky. Now, listen, to me, draft grades are like, the way too early top 25s in college football and basketball, the bracketologies that come out in April for March of 2025. I read all of them. I take them all in. I find them interesting. I find them, fun, but they don't necessarily mean anything, especially this early. You're kind of just going off of the process. And in some cases, a lot of cases, you're kind of going off of your own evaluations of a player when they may not necessarily match up with a team's evaluation. So it's tough to really make a true assessment at this point.
And I said this after I gave my grades. They weren't my opinions. It was NFL people. And certainly NFL people don't always get it right, but I respect their opinions a lot more than I do my own. But the other thing is I also said, these are the grades of these guys entering the league. Their final grades are the most important, and we're going to find out what those grades are. And they determine those grades at the end of their career. I love a saying I heard Nick Saban say to me once. He goes, you may come in here a 3-star, a 4-star, a 5-star. I don't give a blank. When you leave, you're going to determine what star you were. So if you're a no star or a 1-star, You can leave a 5, but if you're a 5, you can leave a 0 or a 1-star. I thought that was brilliant analysis by Nick. Now, I'm also
It's
somebody
true.
who's been accused of never having Nick Saban say anything I don't think is brilliant.
But no, I would agree with his assessment there. So I'll say that.
Let's talk about immediate impact. What player in this draft do you think makes the biggest immediate impact?
I would say I think Brock Bowers has a chance to. I think he definitely has a shot to. I would say probably Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that the two receivers that went in the top 6 have the best chance to make an immediate major impact. Him and Malik Neighbors. I think there's a chance that one of them could be the best player taken in the draft when all is said and done. I'll go with Marvin Harrison Jr. because I think that I like the Cardinals quarterback situation a little bit better with Kyler Murray than the Giants. So I think that he will have the biggest impact from week 1. But I would say that Brock Bowers is right in that category.
I asked an NFL general manager who was picking in the bottom 10, who I have immense respect for, tremendous respect for him. And the person said to me, I asked them, if there's one guy in this draft that I could tell you you could come away with, who would it be? And I didn't finish the sentence. He said, Roma Dunze. I said, what? He goes, let me tell you about this kid. He goes, Marvin's not signing his contract, doesn't want to work out at the combine, doesn't want to do anything at his pro day. He goes, listen, he's super talented. He's super talented. He beats to his own drum. He's great. He goes, this is no slam on him. Malik Neighbors, incredibly talented. He goes, those guys are all good. He says, but Roman Dunze is a combination of both, but a level of maturity, he said, that you just don't usually find. Usually in wide receivers, there's a little bit of immaturity, a little bit of prima donna. He goes, it's none of it. He is fast, great hands. He said, and I listen to this, an offensive lineman's mentality. He's just a worker. He goes, I would love that kid on my team. He goes, now, if I had other needs, he goes, or whatever, he goes, but if there's just one kid that you told me, I thought that was fascinating. What would you think of? I mean, if he could have one receiver, he wanted Rome, and this is a very respected GM. What do you think of that?
I think it makes sense. I mean, I you could tell just from listening to Roma Dunze after he was drafted and kind of taking in how mature he is and how level-headed and polished he really is. He's ready for the NFL physically. He's ready to go. I think he's in a great situation in Chicago where he doesn't have to come in and be the number one guy right away because they have DJ Moore and they also have Keenan Allen and they have, you know, Caleb Williams. So they gave, I mean, side note, I think Caleb Williams is stepping into one of the better situations a number one pick has ever stepped into at quarterback.
100% agree.
But Roma Dunze, I think, is going to have. I think if there's a safe bet for a guy who's just going to have an excellent career, he would be one of the safest bets in the draft.
I want to go to a pick that the Raiders, they stole Jackson JPJ. They stole him. And here's the funny part. You may remember we talked about on this podcast, there are so many bad drafting teams that a lot of good players were going to get pushed down. We talked about there's going to be first round talent because it was such a deep draft going in the second round. I know teams that absolutely wanted JPJ and were going to take him in the first round. But like the Raiders with Bowers, he just kept getting pushed down. So they got somebody they didn't think that they would get. And the Raiders to nab him in the second round was, to me, I believe is going to be one of the steals of the draft. I'd like your opinion on that.
I thought it was an excellent pick. We knew that they were going to go. They weren't leaving the draft without at least one or two offensive linemen. Now you have a guy who has some versatility on the interior. They can, they don't have to rush him in, but I think he's going to step in and be ready to go day one. And the value they got him in picking in the 30s is just, tremendous. I mean, was he in the 30s or was he low 40s? I forgot exactly where they got him.
No, they got
But
him. You ready for this one?
mhm,
Uh, they got him at 44.
44. Wow. Okay. I forgot if they had traded up or not. But I mean, that's
No,
just tremendous. I think there were a bunch of guys in that, like you said, in that early second round, that really are going to end up being steals. I think he's one of them. I think that Cooper DeJean of the Eagles, Kool-Aid McKinstry, perhaps.
couldn't
Trying
believe
to think
Kool Aid.
that
I could not believe. I could not believe Kool Aid.
J-
I was.
Johnny Newton falling to the Commanders. I think that those guys really are going to end up being steals when all is said and done.
And what got me is one executive who I'm pretty good friends with. We were texting during the draft, and when the second round starts, he goes, "Bad teams, bad drafting." And when the Raiders got JPJ, he said, "Tom Telesco, disciplined pays off." I mean, it just was. I thought it was. Again, my draft grades don't matter, and the best ones come in 10 years when the players tell us what they were. But man, I thought they were really good. All right, I want to turn to a couple of things, and it's first one is Raider related. When you look now at the discipline of AP and the discipline of Tom Telesco. He let the draft come to him. No reaches. He's an investor, not a gambler. I think the Raiders have sent a message to the NFL. They got 8 guys of the same mindset, captains, leaders, warrior type. I shouldn't use that term because you know what, it's disrespectful to our military, and I don't mean it because let's not pretend football is war, but battlers. They got guys who have the same kind of mentality. I think the Raiders have really sent a message to the league. Our wandering in the wilderness is over now. We're going to go back and be run like and be like the Raiders of old in a good way. I think they did. Am I wrong?
Well, they've been searching for, and we said this all offseason, they've been looking for consistency. And that's something they've lacked for 20 years. And that's something that they need to find. They need to find that consistent approach. They need to find that stability. And I think that's what they were looking for with this first draft class under these two guys is players that you can count on, players that are dependable, players that are going to, contribute, have a role early on. And I think they're guys that are like you said, they're cut from the same cloth of, that mindset of team first, that mindset of, being willing to sacrifice and do what is asked of you. And I think that that's how you build up in the NFL. I think that you look at the approach that they're taking. They are going with now. I know there was talk about them going with a quarterback in this draft, and the reports they might have looked to trade for Michael Penix, whatever. But they're looking to build their roster up and have the roster as good as possible to see if these guys they have aren't the quarterback of the future. Well, when they get that franchise quarterback, whether it's in a trade or free agency or the draft, they'll have that foundation set. That's the approach I think they're taking. And I think that's the approach they're taking. They're playing a long game where they're saying we're going to be a factor for many years, not just a one-off playoff appearance here and there.
I want to talk with you about Mark Davis. Um, I have certainly disagreed with some of his decisions, but I admire the way he's running this franchise. He admits I'm not my dad. And as good of a football guy as Al Davis was, and I think he's the greatest general manager in professional sports ever, he was not a good businessman. And Mark Davis has proved to be as better of a businessman as his dad was better as a football guy. He admits it, which clearly shows you a level of humility. And he goes and gets football guys. He trusts them. When he has to, he lets them go and eats tens of millions of dollars. If he was a bad owner, he wouldn't do that. I can guarantee you, I know of some franchises in this league that would not have gotten rid of coaches that would have cost them that much money. And he trusts his football people. And I'm going to say this. If the owner's not a coach, if he's not a football guy like Al Davis, that's all you can ask for. He's went and got respected football people and let them do their thing. Have some of them not worked out? Absolutely. But at least he's doing his part. I think he is an underrated owner. And you know this, I don't work for him. If I was critical of him, he would not care because I wouldn't do it in a way that I made it personal. I'm just saying exactly what I truthfully believe. He is an underrated owner. What is your perspective on Mark Davis?
Well, I think that the national kind of outsider perspective, I think will will change when they kind of get that consistency established and they start to win and start to become the Raiders of old. Because right now, when you look at all the coaching changes, the front office changes, all the kind of instability they've had in recent years, it still kind of gets lumped into what the Raiders were at the end of Al Davis's life and what they were for most of what Mark Davis's ownership. Um, I do think, like you said, I think the direction they're on right now seems to be a good one. It seems like he's turned it over and trusted it to football people that he trusts and he knows can get the job done. It seems like they are building for something long term with the head coach and general manager. They're not just looking for something fly by night or the flashiest hire or the biggest name they could go get. So I think those are all good signs. I think that the more that they continue to progress with the roster and progress as a team, the better it's going to look for Mark Davis. I don't think anybody's expecting them to challenge the Chiefs for the division or any AFC this year, but they did beat them last year once. And, they obviously finished strong considering how chaotic the season began last year under Josh McDaniels. So I think if the Raiders have a solid season this year and it looks like they're building something, you're going to see Mark Davis, I think, start to get some kudos nationally.
There were a couple of quarterbacks the Raiders would have liked, but they weren't going to get there. You can't trade with people who don't want to trade, or the cost is just too high for the value of the player. But I also like them saying we've seen enough for Aiden that we need to see more, but we haven't seen enough to call him our franchise guy. We bring in Gardner, but Gardner's got a contract that is easily manageable. I like their approach of let's be cautious and see what we got with Aiden and Gardner. I like that.
Yeah, if you're not convinced on a quarterback, or there's not a guy that, if you're not convinced on a guy early, or if there's not somebody that's really enticing late, or the board doesn't fall right for you, you're better off not forcing the pick, because I feel like when you're picking, I mean, I was stunned. We said this a few weeks ago. I remember I set the over under on quarterbacks at 4.5 in the first round. I thought it would go over. I thought we'd get 5. The fact we got 6 wasn't shocking. The fact we got 6 in the top 12 was. I mean, what you're seeing is now teams are so, there's such a desperation at the quarterback position in the NFL that now I think you're seeing some guys get bumped up that otherwise might not have. So I think if you're the Raiders, you're better off not forcing it. Listen, nobody expected the Falcons to take Michael Penix Jr. at 8. And if you can't, if that's the guy say they wanted, you can't trade up with somebody that doesn't want to trade up with you. After that, if they weren't convinced on, moving up a couple spots for JJ McCarthy, or they couldn't, or, Bo Nix, there's no sense in picking one of those guys. You're better off rolling with what you have, seeing what you have there, and then reassessing next offseason how you want to go about building the quarterbacks.
All right. I can't let you get out of here. We got to talk about Michael Penix. Now, let me lay out my opinion. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I am friends with Kirk Cousins, so you knew that, but I want to make that clear and not because I think I'm being biased, but in case anybody wants to filter what I'm saying, I don't have a problem being that happening. If you want to pick Michael Penix, if you think Michael Penix is your future guy, I'm fine with that. Then you don't go give Kirk Cousins a $180 million contract, $100 million of it guaranteed. You don't do that. Because now he has to basically sit for 2, probably 3 years. And here's the problem. If you want to sit a guy, then take JJ McCarthy, who's 21,
Not
not this
24.
guy who's 24. So if he sits 2 years, now he's 26. If you sit JJ for 2 years, like an Aaron Rodgers situation or a Pat Mahomes with Alex Smith, he's 23, still younger than Penix. This is not a criticism of Penix. It's not a criticism of Cousins. It's a criticism that, in my opinion, and then I hear them saying, we're going to be so good for so long, we're not going to be back in this position. Well, if that's the case, you don't expect Kirk Cousins to retire in 2 years. This was a dumb pick, period. And that's not a reflection of Penix. It's not a reflection of Cousins. It's a reflection of the leadership of the Falcons. It's why they're there every year as bad drafters. It's why, like in the movie The Water Boy, you can have some guy standing in the parking lot this morning of the Falcons and say, we still suck.
It's, to me, it's bizarre because, like you said, you're taking a guy who, if everything, you're taking a guy at number 8, who, if everything works out the way your franchise plans it and isn't going to play for at least 2 years, because you don't sign Kirk Cousins to that 4-year, $180 million contract if you don't think you're getting at least 2 good seasons out of him as your quarterback. Now, okay, I understand Kirk's in his mid-30s and, he's coming off the Achilles and you want to have insurance. I get that. But to take a guy at 8 as your insurance when he is, like you said, 24 with injury concerns and probably isn't going to play for a couple of years, it's just bizarre. I don't know. Some part of me wonders, and again, I'm just spitballing here. I'm not reporting this. Part of me wonders if, the Falcons going into the offseason knew we got to solve this quarterback thing. We got to get, they knew they were picking 8th, but they were like, okay, we got to solve this quarterback thing. And the best way to be competitive and have a chance to win a division next year is by signing a guy like Kirk Cousins. And then they fell in love with Penix during the draft process, and they didn't necessarily expect to do that. And I think they felt like, oh my God, now we got to take this kid and, try to sell it as this, succession plan. And I just don't, I don't get it, because you didn't get a player to help your team now, whether it was another offensive weapon or lineman or pass rusher or a defensive player. And, you don't sign Kirk Cousins to finish with 7 wins again. You're trying to sign him to get to 9, 10 wins and win your division. And I don't know. It was just strange. Maybe it works out long term, but I'll put it this way. If it does, it's going to defy all logic.
I agree. Hey, tell everybody your X handle, will you?
Sure. You can find me on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, at Matt Kladik 919, at MATTHLADIK 919. And I'm always on there willing to chat it up with fans and, give my opinions on things.
Make sure you put the Spun in your favorites. It's just a great website, everybody. And remember, go to SI.com/NFL/Raiders for all of our articles. We'll see you tomorrow.